Look around you, at your room, at your phone, at what you did with yesterday. What you're seeing isn't a mess in your things. It's the imprint of a mess inside you. Scattered attention, a routine with no direction, a life surrounded by things pulling energy out of you without your permission. And it isn't some distant future that changes your life. It's what you put in order today. But the reason that actually works is far more interesting than the usual advice about discipline. And Carl Jung is the one who explained it. In 1913, Jung lost everything. Respected psychiatrist, university lecturer, president of the World Psychoanalytic Association, the chosen heir of Freud himself. Within a single year, none of it was left. He broke with his mentor, lost his entire circle, gave up his posts. They called him a mystic and quite possibly insane. Then came the period he himself considered dangerous. For nearly 6 years, he spent his nights confronting his own interior images and recording everything in a red leather notebook. He was seriously afraid he was losing his mind. Now here's what he did so that he didn't. He didn't stop working. He kept seeing patients. He kept his practice, his family, his schedule, the ordinary rhythm of his days. He later wrote that his family and his profession were what held him to reality, while he went down into a place a lot of people don't come back from. Order wasn't decoration in his life. Order was the thing that kept it from coming apart. The alchemists, whom Jung studied for decades, were obsessed with one particular thing: the vessel. Before any transformation can begin, you need a container capable of withstanding the process. Without it, whatever's inside just boils off and disappears. Jung took that image literally. The psyche needs a vessel too. And that vessel is your routine, your habits, your boundaries, the rhythm of your days. That's the whole thing. You don't control what rises up from inside you, the anxiety, the craving, the anger, the mood that shows up uninvited. But you have total control over the container it happens in. A man with no order isn't freer than everyone else. He's just less protected. What follows is 10 practices, all of them built on that logic. These aren't comfort tips, this is construction. And by the end you'll notice something. Not one of them requires anyone's permission or money or the right circumstances. Practice 1. Guard your attention, because attention is your energy. Jung worked with the idea of psychic energy. The meaning is simple and inconvenient. You have a limited supply, and it flows wherever you point your attention. And here's the part that matters. Whatever you feed attention to grows, not metaphorically. It literally gains weight inside you. Every time you replay that insult for the 20th time, you're investing energy in the insult. Every time you spend an hour scrolling through other people's lives, you're investing energy in other people's lives. And then you wonder why there's nothing left for your own. Your attention is the only genuinely non-renewable resource you own. You can't buy it back, and you can't recover it. And the noise isn't only external. The internal kind is worse. The worry that keeps returning, the conversation you've rehearsed 20 times, the argument you're having with someone who isn't in the room. Start with something measurable. For the next 7 days, pick one task per day and give it your attention completely. 15 minutes of work with the phone in another room, one meal with no screen, one conversation where you look at the person and don't interrupt, and don't measure the output. Count something else. How many times your hand reached for the phone without you deciding to. That number is the size of the crack in your vessel. Practice 2. Take your body seriously. Jung was a physician before he was anything else, and he never split the psyche from the body the way we do now. He watched unlived tension surface physically, as insomnia, as a clenched jaw, as exhaustion with no medical cause. The body isn't a metaphor. It's where everything you didn't allow yourself to feel goes to live. And it runs both ways. A depleted man who neglects his body makes decisions from a position of weakness without noticing he's doing it. His pessimism often isn't a worldview, it's sleep deprivation. Jung himself spent the last decades of his life chopping wood, cooking over fire, hauling stone and sailing, not for fitness. He said the physical work brought him back to reality after hours spent in the depths. The rule is simple. When the body gets used to obeying, the psyche picks up discipline. When the body gets used to quitting at the first resistance, the psyche learns exactly the same thing. For the next 7 days, give your body 1 movement a day, the simplest possible. What matters isn't the intensity, it's that it doesn't get cancelled. Practice 3. Change yourself, not your location. This is the most expensive illusion in most people's lives. The belief that the problem is outside. A different city will fix it. A different job will end the exhaustion. A different apartment will bring order. Then the move happens, the boxes get unpacked, and 2 months later the identical chaos is back because it traveled in the suitcase. Jung has an exact explanation for this. You bring the shadow with you, the part of yourself you refuse to claim. It does not stay behind at the old address. And there's a question that immediately shows you where you stand. Think about the problem that keeps recurring in your life, at work, in relationships, with money. If it only shows up in one environment, the environment is the problem, and the answer is to leave. But if it shows up in completely different places, with people who've never met each other, in different periods of your life, then the common element is obvious. Admitting that is unpleasant, but it's also the only good news in the whole situation, because what's inside you is the only thing you can actually change. Practice 4. Look at what you can't go without. Here Jung made an observation almost nobody connects to his name. In 1961, a few months before he died, he wrote a letter to Bill Wilson, one of the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous. It concerned a former patient, a man Jung had told years earlier that medicine had nothing left to offer him. In that letter, Jung put forward an idea that became famous. The craving for alcohol is, on a low level, the equivalent of the thirst for wholeness on a high one. The man isn't looking for the bottle, he's looking for a completeness he doesn't have, and he grabs the nearest available substitute. That's why attacking a habit head-on almost always fails. You remove the substitute and leave the emptiness untouched, and the emptiness will find a new substitute, often one that looks more respectable and runs you just as completely. And notice, the issue isn't the habit, it's the dependency. Drinking coffee is one thing, not being able to start your day without it is something else entirely. Using your phone is one thing. Feeling physical anxiety when it's 3 feet away is another. The test is simple and uncomfortable. Drop the thing for a single day and watch what happens inside you. If nothing does, you own it. If there's tension, justification, and internal negotiation, you already know which one of you is in charge. And the next question matters more than the first. What emptiness is this thing covering? Practice 5. Don't decide while you're flooded. Jung didn't discover this in theory. He found it with a stopwatch in his hand. At a hospital outside Zurich, he'd say a word and ask the patient to answer instantly with whatever came to mind. On most words, the answer came straight back. But on certain ones, always specific to that individual, the time stretched, the person stumbled, laughed for no reason, gave an absurd answer. That's how he found complexes, charged emotional knots that fire on their own. When a complex fires, you stop reacting to the present. You react to an old scene with the intensity that scene deserved, aimed at whoever happens to be standing in front of you. That's why some arguments carry rage far too big for the subject. A decision made in that state isn't a decision you made. But suppressing the emotion isn't the answer either. What gets suppressed accumulates and detonates later at the worst possible moment. The point is to put distance between what you feel and what you do. One practical tool. Before any significant decision, ask yourself a single question. If I weren't angry or afraid or excited right now, would I still make this same call? Write the answer down. Don't just think it, write it, because writing slows the impulse enough for you to see it. And one additional rule, any serious decision someone demands you make immediately is usually a decision you shouldn't make. Urgency is a pressure tactic, not information. Practice 6, stop living on the eve of your life. Jung described a way of existing he called the provisional life. It's the life of someone who treats the present as a rehearsal. Nothing is final. This job is just for now. This city is only until the real thing shows up. This relationship is only until I figure out what I actually want. That man isn't lazy. He's often intelligent and full of plans. He simply refuses to close doors because choosing means losing every other option, and he wants to keep them all open, and he spends an entire life on the eve of living one. There's a reason for it almost nobody sees. As long as you don't act, you remain the man who could have. As long as the project doesn't start, it stays perfect. As long as the conversation doesn't happen, you can still believe it would have gone well. To act is to agree to be measured. That's why it hurts. Postponement also has a hidden price. A deferred decision doesn't sit still waiting for you. It rots. The conversation you didn't have 6 months ago now takes 3 times the courage, because now it carries the weight of 6 months of silence. Think right now of one decision you already know you need to make. It appeared in your head while I was talking. You don't need information about it. You've had that for a long time. What you're waiting for is permission, and it isn't coming from anyone. Practice 7. Take your projections back. Jung would say that depending on other people's approval isn't a character flaw, it's a misdelivered address. When you need someone's recognition in order to feel your own worth, you've hung a projection on them. You've granted them authority they don't actually have and made them the judge while you took the defendant's chair. And you lose twice. You lose your independence. And you lose the truth. Because a man who needs approval automatically drifts toward the people who flatter him and away from the ones who tell him what's actually happening. So, shrink the audience and raise the quality of the council. Pick 2 or 3 people who care about you and want nothing from you, and give only them the right to full honesty. Everyone else's opinion is a weather report, not a verdict on your value. There's a simple image worth keeping: a statue in a public square. Today there are flowers at its feet, tomorrow there's garbage. The stone doesn't change by a gram either way. Practice 8. Choose wholeness over flawlessness. Jung left behind a line that turns the entire self-improvement conversation upside down. He said he would rather be whole than good. The difference is enormous. Good is a demand of the persona, the mask you show the world. And to keep meeting it, you have to send everything that doesn't fit the image down to the basement. The anger, the envy, the ambition, the exhaustion. Whole is the man who knows both halves and has claimed them. Seen that way, perfectionism isn't modesty, and it isn't diligence. Very often it's fear wearing the costume of high standards, fear that the work will be seen and judged. Work doesn't become finished when there are no flaws left in it. It becomes finished when it goes out into the world. Pick one thing you've been holding for months on the grounds that it isn't ready, and release it this week exactly as it is. You'll find the world is far less interested in its defects than you imagine, and that the first real piece of feedback teaches you more than 6 months of polishing alone in the room. Practice 9. Choose your own difficulty. Jung left an image that explains a great deal. No tree can grow toward heaven unless its roots reach down toward hell. Growth requires descent, not because suffering is noble, but because you can't get any larger while staying only in the lit half of yourself. We live with comforts kings of past centuries never had, and that comfort collects a quiet fee. It softens us and convinces us life is supposed to be easy. Then difficulty arrives, as it always does, and the training isn't there. A muscle that goes unused atrophies. The same is true of your courage, your discipline, your capacity to endure. For the next 7 days, choose one small difficulty each day and walk into it deliberately. Cold water at the end of the shower, stairs instead of the elevator, coffee without sugar, but make some of them a different kind because those are the genuinely hard ones. Apologize to the person you owe an apology. Tell the truth in a conversation you've been avoiding. Sit in silence without reaching for your phone. The goal isn't suffering. The goal is teaching your psyche that it doesn't run. Practice 10. Drop the grudge because it costs more than you think. In Jung's terms, resentment isn't an emotion, it's a connection. As long as you hold it, you stay tied to that person by a thread, and you're the one holding the thread. Energy flows one direction along it. Your attention, the least renewable thing you own, goes to a person who may not be thinking about you at all. The cruelest version of that prison is waiting for an apology, deciding you can't move forward until the other person acknowledges the damage they did. You've handed the key to your own life to the one who hurt you and asked him to decide when the cell opens. Forgiveness here isn't about morality. It's a practical decision, pulling your capital out of a losing position. Take 3 days. Pick one grudge that still occupies your head and write down what happened. Then ask yourself one question. How many hours of my attention did this take in the last month? And what would I have built with those hours? The number alone is usually enough. Now look at all 10 together. Attention, the body, yourself instead of your location. Dependency, distance between feeling and action, the end of the provisional life. Projections withdrawn. Wholeness over flawlessness, chosen difficulty, the grudge released. Not one of them requires anyone's permission. Not one depends on money, on circumstances, or on someone else changing first. That isn't a coincidence. That's the vessel. You don't choose what rises up in you next week. You don't choose who gets sick, who leaves, or what news arrives on a Thursday. But you completely choose whether, by the time it does, there's a form standing there capable of holding it. And remember how that man's story ends. Jung never got back what he lost in 1913. He lost his chair, his friends, and the standing he'd spent years building. The red book he wrote during those nights sat in a Swiss bank vault for decades and wasn't published until 2009, almost 50 years after his death. But he spent the last decades of his life at a tower he built with his own hands on the shore of a lake at Bollingen. He hauled the stone himself and added sections over many years. He lived there without electricity, chopped his own wood, cooked his own food. No audience, no students, no patients, nobody to impress. Just stone, water, and a rhythm he kept himself. He said that was where he became what he actually was. So start today and start small, because big decisions made on enthusiasm last about 3 days. Pick one practice out of the 10, just one, and stay with it for 7 days before you even think about the second. One stone laid well is worth more than 10 that collapse next week. You're not building discipline for its own sake. You're building the vessel that holds what's coming. If this landed for you, hit the like button. It helps these ideas reach the people who need them today. And leave a comment. Which of the 10 are you starting with this week? If you want to keep going deeper into Jung's psychology applied to modern life, subscribe and turn on notifications. Nobody becomes whole by imagining figures of light, only by making the darkness conscious.